being human being, I think music is like innate to us. Like, I think it's one of the greatest things we've ever invented as people. And I would dare say that maybe we didn't even invent it. Maybe it's always been here and we just tapped into it. Speaks to the power of working in an ensemble. I think there's a magic that happens when it's not just one person leading. I think when the greater of the sum of its parts kind of thing. You're 3 minutes into the jam and everyone's kind of got their groove, and then all of a sudden it just fucking locks in. And because the crowd's been paying attention and they're with you every step of the way, now they're locked in and you're all locked in. And you're almost like this hive mind now because you all work together to get there. I think it's fucking magic, dude. We're all just treading into fucking the abyss together. Any misstep could lead us down another hole, you know, and that could be a beautiful thing. I think that's what's great about jam bands, letting it all hang out. And if things happen and derail, you just embrace it and you turn it into another opportunity to create something new.
Scott motherfucking Hachey from the Magic Beans on the Weird Music Podcast. Scott, man, so glad to have you here. There's a huge tour coming up for the Magic Beans.
Yeah.
They're going to be at the Summit Music Hall on October 27th. Can't wait for that. They'll be in Cleveland, I think, the night before. And this is all gearing up to a huge tour closer in your guys' hometown, the Mission Ballroom.
Yeah.
And that's on November 13th. So, man, life's back in full swing, you know.
Like it.
I do want to say, for some reason, every time Magic Beans leaves a comment on some shit on Facebook, that pings right to the top of my news feed. And that's become one of my favorite things with my social media escapism to check
Yeah.
out. So who's behind all that shit?
That's me.
My God. All right, cool. Well, now I'm even more glad to have you on here.
I'm the social media troll, I guess you could say.
Dude, you're the guru.
Guru, there you go. That's a better term. I'm sure people listening may have seen some of my posts pop up or around the scene and whatever. And it's all in harmless, good fun. I don't like to think of it as a trolling because lots of what I say is pretty positive, or I'm just poking fun at like my friends or something. You know, at this point, I know all the guys on the circuit, so sometimes they'll think like I'll get a message like, you shouldn't make fun of the Kitchen Dwellers like that. And I'm like, I know all those guys, man. Like, it's all fun in games. Like, I love all those people. I want the best for them. And when it comes down to it, social media is such a fickle marketing technique that it works out in everyone's advantage. Like, when I comment and bring more, you know, you may have not seen that post if I hadn't comment on it. So it's good for everyone. Anyone that says differently doesn't know how social media works, buddy.
And social media aside, it's some good comedy, man. There's some gems you got there. So let me jump to the side here, though. I love your flavor that you take with creating like context and narrative around like what you guys are doing means for you. You know, we're talking about social media. You've been pretty transparent and admirably vulnerable about really what this tour means to you. And I want to give you a moment here to really unpack that. We had this fucking awful lockdown a year and I remember the motherfucking Magic Beans trailer, like with all your merch got snagged. Oh my
Halfway
God.
Through. We're like, well, at least we have all our merch to sell during the pandemic. And then some guy just like steals our whole trailer with all our merch. We're like, okay.
Must have been a diehard fan.
Oh, I'm sure that's what he was.
Oh,
that was ridiculous. But, you know, we're lucky to have supportive fan base, man, that helped us like cover some of those costs with the GoFundMe and stuff. And pandemic, I mean, that just speaks to how hard the pandemic was on everyone. You know, it's like, that guy was obviously in like some sort of really tough spot where he decided he needed to steal someone else's shit. You know, it's like, so that's kind of, you know, obviously I'm not happy about it. I don't love that guy, you know, but it's like, I do try to see it from that way. It's like the pandemic was fucking hard on people, dude. And like being in a metropolitan area, I saw the crime go up. I saw the homelessness go up and stuff. It was just a hard time, man. And to kind of like carry that into from our perspective, you know, is like, we were both lucky and, you know, unlucky, where it's like, you know, we had a lot of tours canceled like everyone else, but we're lucky in the fact that we had gotten to at least a level or tier where we had like a fan base out there, you know? So like, even though we weren't touring, there were people that were going to listen to the songs we released and buy merch. And, you know, we still had people out there supporting us. So my heart was definitely with those bands that were just like, you know, one level behind us, who were just kind of breaking through. And then their shows got pulled out from under them, and they don't have the like sphere of influence or reach that we do to like reach out to their fans. And like, I wonder how lots of those bands made it through financially, and just like with like, you know, when it comes to art, you need positive feedback from people to like keep churning it out and keep the dream alive. And like, so it's like, when I feel bad for those people that had to go 2 years, you know, without that and stuff. And then the other flip of the coin, you know, how we were unlucky is we're just kind of one tier below, like being able to sit on our laurels. I know there are some bands, maybe that's not the right term, but there are some bands that like we're able to be like, oh, pandemic, you know, let's just take a break because we've been working so hard and we're already financially stable and stuff. Like, we hadn't gotten there yet. So it was scary for us. It was like, man, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. Like, that's just to be real, you know. And you talk about trying to be transparent with the fans. That's kind of like the vibe I'm trying to get out there is, you know, from the Beans and like a lot of the other bands on the scene. Like, pandemic was really hard. Any band that made it through could be in dire straits right now, or you know, everyone's just kind of giving it one more go out there sometimes, you know. And that's how I see this tour, is like, not that it's like our last tour, but like there's like expectations, and just like there's a lot more investment in it, you know. We're really going out there to try to like pick this thing up where we left off, you know what I mean? And try not to lose the steam we had going into the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, fans, like, they don't always understand just the degree of like blood, sweat, and tears that is involved behind the scenes of their favorite musicians. Like, they're raging at the show, it's a great time, and like the extremely long drives through the night and all the money that may not have even been there to spend that had to be spent. Like,
yeah.
So hey, Scott, I want to ask you, I mean, we all faced our demons during this lockdown, and you know, a musician like yourself, who I believe, you know, from what I've seen, you hold that sincerity and vulnerability and transparency that we'd love to see. You hold it in high regard. Like, a lot of people are like rock stars and they have a cool image or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what did this lockdown like cause you to realize about yourself, your life path, and really what music means to you, and what the opportunity to be this musician that you are means to you?
Yeah. Gosh, man, like, that was such a good question, because it really turned my whole perspective of like what I was doing in the music industry on its head, man. And like put a lot of things in perspective for me. To start with the basics, I mean, to like dissect my own psychology, like I realized how a good amount of my self-esteem and like daily energy was coming from the positive feedback I get from this, you know, treadmill of 100 likes on your Facebook post and playing a show and people saying they love you and you guys are great. And it's like, and then that's gone. It's like, you know, tapping into like what really makes me content and happy beyond that, outside of music in my personal life, and being able to like, if this ends tomorrow, am I going to be sad? Am I going to be able to continue and be a happy person? You know, so it's kind of like replacing that void with like things in my everyday life, like just like positive relationships and personal time and hikes and stuff like that, like being truly happy beyond like having this positive feedback, you know, thing that I'm so lucky to have with the band. And then on the other side with the music, kind of just like figuring out like, well, what do you want out of music, man? You know, and like, I think I'm not the only person who's gotten caught in like that treadmill, that like momentum thing, like trying to keep climbing the game or whatever, and the hustle and stuff. And it starts to consume you, and other things fall to the wayside. And you wonder like, you know, do I love music anymore? Do I love my bandmates anymore? Is this just like a job? Has it turned into that, you know? And it was cool to like kind of remove a lot of the positive factors. And then I was like, wow, I still love to make music. Like I wake up every morning and I just like want to make music. And it doesn't even matter if it's a Bean song or like a Hachey song, or if no one ever hears it. And I just want to make it. And then I was like, wow, how can I like bring that energy into the next after the pandemic, man? And that's kind of where I'm at with music now. I've just like shelved a lot of the bullshit that comes along with the industry and like the climb to the top and like the business side of it. And honestly, I just feel like if that stuff's gonna come, it will come. And I'm just really focused on the art and making sure that like my band has the best energy and like camaraderie that we can right now, and that we're going out to execute and stuff like that. So yeah, man, the pandemic really honestly changed everything for me, dude. I feel like 100% more focused, and I understand what I want out of my music career now, as opposed to it kind of controlling me. I'm going to take the reins now and make it work for me. And I'm not going to be like a pawn to the emotional roller coaster that is like being in this band. It's just like, I'm just going to feel positive that like we're out there making the art, we're doing our best, and what comes, and what doesn't. And that's fine with me.
Man, it seems like you've had a great perspective shift. I bet a lot of people can relate, having to really look in the mirror and assess what defines themselves. And, it always comes back to why.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, man, it's
well, what's your why, and that's like such a huge part of it. That's like a big thing and that's why I've tried to bring it into our marketing, because that's like the big marketing thing now in the last like decade or two, is like kind of Apple started it. They're like, well, yeah, we have products, but like, why are you buying our products? And that's why you get those like commercials where it's like some guy holding a baby and he's like, but they're selling you an Apple iPod. You're like, wait, what a second. It's like, not that I'm trying to trick people into it, but it's like, that's what people invest in businesses now. They want to know that they're investing in something that they support on like a more broader level than just like, oh, your tunes are dope. You kind of want to think like the guy's a good person, and that like you're putting your money into someone who like is like a good part of society. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I just want to be transparent with people, so they know that like we're just real people grinding it out. Like when you see us night after night, we're just like, there's no wall between like me and you. I'm not like some cool artist and you're not. Like, it's like you're working hard at your job. This is me working hard at my job. And then for this hour and a half set, we're both going to fucking turn it all off, and we're going to just connect and make music. And and you're helping, you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of bands that bring this whole thing that like, we're coming to crush, you guys are the fans, fucking sit down, shut up and listen to us play. And then like, we're done here. And it's like the connection for me is like foremost. And I need to feel that connection with people, whether it's 12 or like a 2000, man.
With the marketing of like, like you mentioned Apple, like with the baby, like the why of it all. I mean, if we're talking about like communication and, taking what's inside us and bringing it out into the world. And some people will speak to hear themselves talk, or they'll speak to look cool. And you can take this as a metaphor with speaking. You can throw in being in a band. So like they'll be in a band to hear themselves play and to be that person in a band, like to, and like reassessing the who's it for, what's it for, and why. And I love your perspective when you say connecting. Not all bands have, I mean, many that we love do, most of them do, but have a connection to the real thing we're getting at with the live show, like connecting through the music. In this experience, how come it's so necessary to have a degree of vulnerability as the musician, and sincerity and genuineness? Like, why are those characteristics so necessary and powerful?
Well, to get kind of, I guess, deep with it, I like to think that people, whether they recognize it or not, can like intuitively detect those sort of things, and I think it goes both ways. They can detect like sincerity, and they can also detect like, I'll say like fear, like I always tell the guys, like if we mess up on stage, like don't get scared, because the people will smell it on you, and even though they didn't recognize the mistake, now they recognize the smell of fear on you. So you need to just blow through it. So I think it comes down to like this bringing the right intention to the concert. Jerry Garcia was always big on that, and I love listening to his quotes about that. That's the most you can practice a bunch, and you can do so many things to prepare, but if you don't bring the right intention to that atmosphere, I think people are going to see right through it. Whether that's like a conscious thing or whether their subconscious is just like, this is fake, or this is like convoluted, and you can't fake it. That's another thing, you know? So it's like, if you're not practicing those things and then bringing them to the stage, I think people can see right through you. And on the other side of it, I think when you do bring it to stage, people can detect it, and they're like, wow, this is some real shit. And we get that a lot with the Beans. I think that's one of our things, is we really do come to play, and we bring like this, we really care. We really do. Like, the guys care. And every time we play, and, you know, I think we'll play next to bands that maybe have like more chops, like, oh, they're all Berkeley trained and all this stuff. And sometimes we'll still have people be like, you guys were better. And I think it was just because like we came with like that intention and that like energy that really kind of like set us apart. So that's just something we try to harness these days and try to like use to our advantage, because I think it's one of our X factor things.
And that's one of the reasons we love the Beans so much, man. Like, we want to see our favorite musicians bearing their soul on stage. That's why we come to the show. I mean, that and a number of other reasons, like all our friends out there.
Party.
So, man, like at Resonance, dude, I'm very grateful that I ate all those mushrooms before your guys' set. Like, that was an amazing time. And you know, you're no rookie, you're no freshman on this music festival thing here. I want to ask you, like, specifically, what do you think it is about psychedelics that like can make music like yours seem so over the top amazing?
Gosh, I don't know. Well, I think psychedelics, in my experience, are the best at like kind of stripping away some, like, a lot of those barriers we build up. You know what I mean? And the ego and the masks we wear and the, you know, expectations we bring to things too. It just wipes all that clean. And, you know, if you're on the right amount and not too much, you know, but not too little, you're kind of like almost like a newborn baby. Things feel brand new to you. You know what I mean? And that's what I like about it. You can just feel something you felt 100 times before, but like it allows you to feel it like it's the first time you've ever felt it. And it just like brings chills to your spine, you know, and eliminating the expectations of what you want to happen, you know, whereas if maybe that's kind of how I feel like even alcohol can work with music really well. I feel like if you come and you're like expecting things to happen, you know, then it like, you're never going to have a good show really as a fan, you know? So it's best to like, whether you can do that sober or use like something else to strip away the expectations and what you want out of the concert, and just go in as like a pure spectator, like grilling on mushrooms. Like, you're just gonna have a better experience, and you're gonna get taken away with the band, you know. And
yeah, so as I'm sure most of you out there listening can relate to, like, these experiences can be very introspective. Like the musicians can be singing a lyric and you're having this rabbit hole in your mind about whatever, you know, grand climax of your life is happening, you know, outside the festival or the show at that time. And it's all very personal. So Scott, my next question for you is like, what is some things, maybe just one thing personally about you that, you know, really only you and maybe some of your closest friends would know about you, that maybe your fans just haven't gotten to know about you yet, that you think they should know?
Well, I am like I'm a pretty strong introvert, which I don't think people grasp because of the attitude I bring to stage, you know, and when I do get to talking, if I'm in a comfortable setting with like 1 to 2 other people and there's great conversation, like I can almost take over sometimes, you know, and people will think, wow, he's really extroverted, he likes to talk. And that's really not me at all. Like I love my free time, personal time. When I'm off the road, I don't go out a lot, and I'm actually the least party animal of the band. That's one thing that's, I think, surprises people. Like, I'm definitely the first one back at the hotel and like first one up in the morning and like stuff like that. So I kind of like, I'm a pretty simple dude. I'm a pretty like live a pretty quiet lifestyle, and the beans in the band is kind of the exception to that. So like when people are seeing me out there doing that thing, that's actually like the exception to like how I actually am.
Mm. So I've listened to Ghost Town, and anyone out there, if you haven't dug in, like very cool, ethereal, groovy, like almost like neo soul jazz kind of instrumental album from Scott semi recently called Ghost Town. Man, so between kind of the way you approach your instrument with the beans, like I'm curious, like what insights kind of drive your approach when it comes to phrasing and composition as a guitar player?
Yeah, man. Thank you. I like to serve the song. I really do. I like to play in an ensemble, and I like to be a cog in that machine. I like to be a part of it. I think, if I were to be critiquey about the jam band scene, I think it's a lot of like lead guitar, and then everyone else is kind of in their wake. Like it's kind of the Fish thing. I'm a Fish kid, so I'm not hating on Fish, but like they invented it. Like Trey's off to the fucking races, and then kind of in his wake, they're like comping behind him, and it's and then there's the best parts of the Fish shows where I feel like he's not doing that, and everyone's like working together, like one by one. No one's ahead of it, and they're all stepping through this, uncharted territory together. So that's a big part of me playing. I'm really kind of like over like the whole guitar hero, like I don't know. I just think a lot of the bands kind of bring some of the same flavor to the table. Like, oh, here's the jam. It's just like a 10-minute guitar solo pretty much the whole time. Just the guitar solo is just soloing. And it's just like, for me, I love rhythm guitar. I love like melodic guitar. I love like chord progressions and like, augmented chords and stuff like that. So it's fun to like try to bring that into the jam world. I think that's like a big thing the Beans want to do. And a big part of our sound is bringing in that neo soul kind of like rhythmic based sort of thing, like rhythm lead guitar, Wolfpack kind of stuff. And like, where no one's kind of like the lead anymore, and it's just like group ensemble. So I think that's kind of like one thing that sets me apart from other players in the scene, I think. And as far as Ghost Town goes, that's just like a genre I've really been into recently, last 5 or 6 years. Neo soul jazz, you hit it like the hip hop jazz kind of stuff that's coming out, Robert Glasper, and like Khruangbin and like all that stuff, like groove music, and it's a lot different approach. So it's fun to do stuff like that where it's kind of like backgroundy music. Khruangbin and like all those like, Bad Not Good and all these bands that are doing that kind of thing. It's kind of nice to just throw on when you're in the boat or you're like working out, whereas like I feel like Beans music or like lots of the other jam music is really like focus forward, like it's listener. You like listen intently. You're listening to the jam, like, and you're honed in. With other music, you can kind of like zone out and let it be part of like the background of the atmosphere. And that's kind of like, it's a whole different approach to making music than how I do with the Beans. So that was kind of the idea behind Hachey's band and whatever.
Yeah. And, so talking about rhythm itself, like, and you mentioned like being an ensemble, like having kind of like being in harmony. I don't understand, and it blows my mind just how like moving rhythm can be, and harmonies, especially vocal harmonies. I know you work with the legend Keith Harker, who is a good friend of mine. I've also taken some lessons with him, and
yeah, nice.
My question for you, Scott, like, what do you think it is about harmony, about just like the physical thing that is rhythm, that it's been like a focal point of humanity since before we had cities and shit. Like, what do you think it is about that is just so profound in our psychology?
Well, I think you kind of touched on it there with how, ancient it is, and you want to talk about harmony, which is like notes and harmony, you know what I mean, on the melodic end, and then on the drum end and like rhythm, there's like what we'll call polyrhythms, which are like two different rhythms that played over each other, like work in harmony, and that's like goes back to people standing around a bonfire in freaking Central Africa banging drums, you know, and that's like central to the core of what if you really want to get into it, like being human being, I think music is like innate to us. Like, I think it's one of the greatest things we've ever invented as people. And I would dare say that maybe we didn't even invent it. Maybe it's always been here and we just tapped into it too. And maybe animals feel music. I think they do. And, you know, I think it's just innate. And I think that speaks to the power of working in an ensemble. I think there's a magic that happens when it's not just one person leading. I think when the greater of the sum of its parts kind of thing, like I'd rather hear a chorus of people singing in perfect harmony than one really great singer. You know what I mean? Because it just gives you fucking chills when you hear like things lock up like that. And that's a great jam too. You know, you're 3 minutes into the jam and everyone's kind of got their groove, and then all of a sudden it just fucking locks in and you're like in this thing where the band is locked in. And because the crowd's been paying attention and they're with you every step of the way, now they're locked in and you're all locked in. And you're almost like this hive mind now because you all work together to get there in the jam. And now you're there together and you're playing note by note. And if you're doing it right, you're not thinking back to where you came from and you're not thinking too forward to where you're going. You're literally living measure by measure, you know, with potentially 1,000 people plus in the crowd. And I think it's fucking magic, dude. Like, it's like we're all just treading into fucking the abyss together. Any misstep could lead us down another hole, you know, and that could be a beautiful thing. I think that's what's great about jam bands. And, you know, and the Grateful Dead was a big part of that, like letting it all hang out. And if things happen and derail, you just embrace it and you turn it into another opportunity to create something new.
You know, with that being said, talking about the Magic Beans, you know, obviously you guys are a fun band. Like it's fucking fun to be at a Magic Beans show, but what other emotions do you hope to invoke through your art with the Magic Beans?
Yeah, thanks for asking, man, because that's a really important part of round 2 of Beans here post-pandemic, and I feel like it's always been a big part of our show, but I would like to evoke some more, you know, mature feelings from people of introspective thoughts and community and finding time for slow songs to think about other emotions other than just like this bass line's dope and I'm trying to get laid and have a drink and stuff like that, you know, and think about like, well, why am I trying to get laid? Like, what will I do after I get laid? Are we going to fall in love? Like, you know what I mean? So I like to bring some more introspective vibes into the band and talk about love and sex and defeat. And I think some of our ballads touch on that stuff. And it's a struggle though, man, you know, like you talk about Resonance when you got an hour set and you have to go in and kind of like send it and compete with these bands that get 2 hours to really like do the full breadth of their thing. It's hard to find like time to do a ballad, you know, and I think that's a big bummer, you know, and I've talked to other bands, tons of bands about this, you know, how they want to work in a slow song, but it's like, man, if you got 45 minutes, you better fucking crush. You know what I mean? And the sad thing about slow songs is it can send people packing to the bathroom or to the bar, you know, and they're better suited for headliner shows at the club where people are there for you and you have more time to work with and stuff. So that's kind of like always been the catch-22 with like ballads and whatever you want to call them, slower songs or emotionally content-based songs, as opposed to just like funky grooves and stuff is finding the place for them in the set.
And I feel like a really good, like you say, like emotionally grounded song, you can really like feel the depth and almost like in some instances the pain, in other instances just like the deep like emotional trigger that is happening inside the musician when they're performing that song. Like I'm a believer that some of the greatest artists, maybe even some of the greatest athletes, like just some of the greatest people in their craft have had to go through extreme lows to be able to have this depth to allow them to create just such high caliber art. And you know, that's something I'm really interested in exploring. Like
Yeah.
Because you don't really necessarily, like you mentioned at a set like Resonance, you don't necessarily get that from that. I want to hear from you if you'd be open to sharing. What do you think has been some of the most like important and influential like growth experiences and lessons that you personally, Scott, have had to learn and endure that have kind of caused you to be this guy you are today that we're all so
Yeah.
excited to see?
Yeah. That's a good question, man. I'm a lucky guy. I've definitely had my share of hardship. But I'd say comparatively to other people, it's not even close. Like I'm still have both my parents and like I got a loving girlfriend. I got a lot of things going for me. So I don't like to like think about that. But I mean, I do have things in my journey that help define me. I've definitely had, one that jumps to mind is I've had a lot of run-ins with like the law. I've been like, yeah, believe it or not. Going back to even when I was a kid, starting around 15, 16, I was getting into trouble with the law a lot. I got kicked out of 2 high schools. I went to 3 separate high schools. Then I went to college and I got kicked out of college and went back to finish, of course, later. But yeah, I like to get into trouble, or I did. Young Scott was sniffing around for trouble and a good time. And, I've spent nights in jail, and I've disappointed my family and my relationships around me and fallen back into bad habits and stuff like that. So that was a huge phase of my life that I worked really hard to get out of, and kind of defines the last 5 or 6 years of my life now that I haven't been getting into trouble. So that's been a big thing for me, man, is making, what I took from that is kind of like taking responsibility for your own actions is a huge thing, and owning up to what you're doing, and then making changes, man. If you have a problem in your life, you can only externalize that on other people for so long. Oh, well, Johnny's always around. He's always passing me the drugs, and it's Johnny's fault. It's like, dude, you're taking the drugs, you're smoking the drugs, you're doing this, whatever. And what it comes down to is like most of your problems are self-inflicted. You're going to be the biggest obstacle in your own life. You're the only one stopping you from becoming a better person. I mean, maybe there's people who live in relationships or something where people are stopping them from being a better person. But I think for the most part, like it's a personal struggle to just become the person you want to be. And you need to like take the reins of your own life and like become that person, or life will come down on you and you won't have a say, and you're going to end up 10 years down the road not happy with who you are and the decisions you made. And that's, no one wants to live with regrets and stuff. So I think that was one really huge thing for me. And then, I think beyond that, just growing up, we started the band when I was about 19 or 20. So I've kind of like become a man even during the course of the band and grown up as a person. So I think just my priorities in general have changed quite a bit. And being in the industry, going back to lots of the stuff we talked about, I think the industry in itself has had an impact on me, and not in a fully positive way. It consumed me for a while, and the hustle and the competition end of it, and like this band's crushing it so hard, and it makes me angry or whatever, like, or jealous, and it's like, you need to unpack that feeling. It's like, why, dude? Like, like you should be happy for any musician, and there's plenty of room at the tops, and they're not stopping you from getting where you. So it's like, there was a lot of that for me for several years as a young man, like, which I think is natural. Being a 20-year-old, you're just fucking competitive and you're fucking wanted and you're hungry and stuff. And the older I've got, the more I've just realized how much none of that serves you at all. And it's just like completely toxic. And if anything, it just brings the art down as opposed to brings it up. So that's definitely what's a huge growing thing for me.
And I feel like there's a connection between that second point you just made and when we were talking about earlier, the why of it all, the who's it for, the what's it for. Like I would imagine as your perspective shifts away from that competitive framework, probably like the quality of your music improves.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all stemming from this place of the who's it for, what's it for, why.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting to see. And to touch on the point you made about like taking the reins of your life, that's so cool to hear, man. Like I can totally relate. Like when I get into something, I get into it so heavily that it's really hard for me to take a step back from it.
Yeah.
Like smoking was an example. Like it was really hard for me to quit smoking, and 10 months ago was the last time I smoked.
Nice,
I still eat some weed cookies. Shout
dude.
out to the weed cookie chef. But man, like taking the reins of your life, like the inverse of just how accountable we are for our whole life is like the potential we have if we like to really take the reins and what we can do with it, because like we are accountable, which means like our dreams are attainable to a degree, because we're not necessarily like to use a metaphor, like a ball on a pool table where like the cue ball comes, it hits it, and then you're just going in this direction. Like you're not, that's not the case. Really, we have the steering wheel in our hands. And, that's just the thought
True.
going through my mind when
So
you
true.
mentioned that. So like, let's say you could give your 20-year-old self a phone call. What would you say to them?
Oh God. I don't know. So many things. I wouldn't want to derail any of the like path he has before him, because I really don't have too many huge regrets when I look back. I would just merely tell him to fucking enjoy the ride, man. And that's the thing about that whole vibe of competition, and it kind of puts you living in the future. You're like, oh, the next gig's it, and like we're building it up, and like, and then you get to the gig and you're not living in the present. So I would just say, man, like enjoy it. Someday you'll be at Red Rocks and you'll miss the old clubs, the little teeny clubs where no one came out and there were no expectations and everyone was high. And like, just remember that like every part of your journey is a part of your journey, and you need to freaking enjoy it. You can't be waiting for a next phase of your life. In that next phase, there'll probably be a time where you look back at the previous phase and miss parts of that. So it's every phase of your life has something to be grateful for, even if it's not the best era of your life. So that's what I would tell him, dude. Just fucking enjoy it, and to practice guitar more.
Hone your craft and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Ghost Town more specifically for a little bit. Like, what was your vision with that? You mentioned the background music, but like, I have like a two-part question for you. For one, what's your thinking in saying, you know what, I'm doing this solo thing and I'm going to make this really certain kind of music? And then part B of that question is like, how is that like approaching music solo? How is that different and unique from the, approaching it as a group like you do with the Magic Beans?
Uh-huh. Well, I think it kind of ties into what I was saying earlier. I'm a compulsive music maker. Like I love making music. And it's always been that way. And I've always been a songwriter. Like I can't help it, man. Like I write 50 songs a year. You know what I mean? I just write songs. Like that's what I do when I get an instrument in my hand. Like some people learn like cool chord. Like I like to shed like my chops a lot, but like instinctually when I grab an instrument, I start writing something and I like put together songs. Like that's just how music connects for me. Like I compose. So for me, it was honestly just like second nature. I was just composing and I was building out my home studio during the pandemic and investing a lot of money into it. And man, I think it was actually it kind of just came together. I invited Duffy and Trask, who's my good buddy on drums, over to just hang one day. And we ended up cutting pretty much the entire rhythm section of the whole record. And then I had just buddies stopping through, like Tyler Adams from the Jaunty was like dropping off a Leslie I bought for my organ. And I was like, you're on my track. And I just, with Hachey, it's kind of just like, it's all for fun. Not that Beans isn't for fun, but I feel like there's some sort of end game. You're like, will the fans like this tune in the context of the Beans? What parts of our set are missing? Do we need more like funk? Do we want to instrument? So there's more like of a conscious like decision making process. Whereas with my solo thing, I was like a little bit here, some of this, and like just completely having fun with it. And then we finished it, and I honestly sat on it for 3 months, and then like a couple of the guys hit me up and they were like, are you ever going to release that? And I was like, yeah, I totally should. So I did. And it's cool, man. It's been helpful doing the Hachey thing to help me touch back in with like that stuff I was talking about, like just music making me happy and being fun again. And like, so it's cool to have this outlet where I'm just fucking having a blast. And then it's a learning experience for me to bring back to the Beans and stuff like that. So, And it's just fun to make music with other people. That way you're not like in this music inbreeding situation where, you know, you're making music with the same four dudes, you know, can get unhealthy after a while.
I want to talk about like what it's like being in a band. You know, you do know touring can
Yeah.
be a
Oh, yeah.
fucking whole thing. And there's so many trials and tribulations of it. And on the other side of that, what the work you guys do, like the musical bond you share is sacred. So there's
Yeah.
so many kind of like wrenches being thrown into the gears that you have to be so zen about, because that bond between the band is sacred. And, you know, you've had this longevity with the Magic Beans. What do you think you've learned as a band, and what kind of ways that you carry yourselves have allowed you to have this longevity?
Well, first of all, don't go on tour until you're ready. That's like my number one rule is like, there's so many, and I feel it. I mean, we did it. We were like so itching to go on tour. Our first tour was from Minnesota, where me and Casey were from, to Florida, where our bassist is from. And there was Atlanta in the middle. That was our routing because we were so desperate to get out on tour. And it was such a financial disaster. So that would be my number one thing is like, make sure people want to see you elsewhere from your local community before you just start driving around and throwing shit at the wall, because it doesn't work, let me tell you. But beyond that, protecting the bond and the relationships in your band is literally the most foremost thing you could ever work on as a band. It's more important than the art, honestly. It really is. And it takes so much work and understanding. You know, I'm sure my bandmates would have tons of input on how to deal with someone like me. And then I have input on how to deal with people like my bandmates. I mean, that's the thing. Every band has their own unique ecosystem going on, and different A types and B types and all that garbage that the psychologists try to pin on us. But like, you know, as the point man, I would say if you're a point man in a band, you got to find like what everyone's good at and like try to bring that out in them, and definitely don't waste any time trying to change people or like make them, you know, some people are like really good at this and they're not good at communication. Like you can work on communication, but it's like, don't ever try to change people. You really just need to find the best parts of everyone and then just bring that out to the forefront and then use that as a team and just work as a team. You know what I mean? And everyone find your niche. And if you're not the point man in the group, you know, I would say find your role and you know, and don't wait always for the guy to tell you where to be. You know, try to help him out by finding out where you could be and kind of filling your holes yourself. And man, just treat everyone with respect, you know, and stuff and communicate, you know, and sometimes communicating can be the biggest struggle because it'll sound like an argument when you're having it. But really what's happening is one person's advocating for themselves and then that person's advocating back for their point of view. And you need to find a middle ground. And you need to give the other people the benefit of the doubt, because unless you picked the wrong people, those people love you. Your bandmates love you deep down. So any issue you have or anything, any disagreements, you should want, you know, some sort of solution for them and for you. You know, you want to meet in the middle. And if you don't, and that person doesn't have the best view, then you might want to consider not having that guy in your band. You really need to have people that have your best interests in mind, you know, because you can't have toxic people out there that are only trying to serve themselves. So but yeah, I mean, we're lucky to not have that. Everyone's there to work together, and bands are fickle like that, man. It's amazing. I'm such a proponent of band music because it does do that greater the sum of the parts. Like when it's working, it's better than a solo musician I feel like will ever be. And that's my personal opinion. But like, I think a band, a 3-piece or above working at a high level, I don't think one person or a producer even stands a chance next to them. You know what I mean? I think there's just magic happening when those people are getting together. And then on the other end, you know, but it's harder, you know, it's like now everything's a part of a 4-person decision, you know, and it doesn't always go your way. So there's the cons and the pros of being in the band. I think the pros outweigh the cons. And if you are a solo musician, you know, get out and create with other people. I really encourage, you know, collabs. If you're a solo guy, make sure you're making time for collabs, or you're bringing other musicians into your studio, so you're used to getting feedback, man, because that's no way to make music. You don't want to, your music will get stale, and you only have so much inside you to create music. So it's to your benefit to get other people's advice and other musicians in on your tunes. Even if you think you got your tune nailed down, dude, bring a drummer into the session. He'll tell you different, man. He'll help you fucking make it a better song, straight up. So it's just like working as a team with other musicians is so crucial. It's part of the magic making music.
I completely agree when you say like just talk about the magic of group music. There's endless metaphors about all just being like one cosmic blob, ethereally communicating. I digress.
We always joke before you leave that our band's kind of like the lone wolf pack. That's like our joke, because we're all so like individualists. We're the lone wolves, but we're the lone wolf pack. So it's like this like dichotomy of like we're 6 very, very different individuals, but we are a pack when it comes down to it. So that's kind of like our nickname for the group.
Well, I can't wait to see the lone wolf pack with the squad out at the Summit Music Hall on the 27th. And, you know, I wish you guys all the best on the road on this tour. Really excited to see you guys continue to grow. And, you know, that show at the Mission Ballroom, if anyone is someone who travels for shows, if you're in the Colorado area, that seems like an awfully fun time. And yeah, man, thanks again for your time. Thanks for hopping on here. Great to talk with you, Scott.
It's a pleasure, man. I do so many interviews that suck balls. This was a really good one. Thank you.
Well, hey, man, thank you for being so authentic and transparent and genuine with your answers, Scott.
Always, dude. It's all I know.
Thank you for listening. Shout out to the sponsor, SEM Tickets. We love y'all. We'll see you real soon.